enjoying our discussion, and you've shared some good insights around the importance of industrial transformation currently, where we're at now in that process, and why we need to pick up the pace and get with that speed of that change. And so, as we kind of think about this conversation, I'd really like to understand more of that path you started to describe in our previous discussion about how we get there and how we go about that.
I'd love to. And we're convinced that we have the path. This path to industrial transformation, to this future state of Industry 4.0, it's a challenging and perilous path.
Yeah.
But once you understand how to do it, it isn't. And we feel that we've cracked the code, and that's what we want to share. We're just so excited to share this path with others.
Good. Excellent.
And I probably would start just again with a story. There's some of the backstory to this, and some of it's only interesting to me probably, but
I find it very interesting. So.
I'm glad. In the early 2000s, the term Internet of Things was coined in 1999 by a researcher from MIT, and I was in grad school at the time. We started the company the next year, and we were doing related technology then, 20 years ago. And in fact, we were funded by the Department of Energy in the early 2000s, along with a bunch of other companies. DARPA was funding a lot of work in this area as well, and a lot of it was focused around what would now be called industrial transformation in Industry 4.0. They used different words at the time, but it was the same thing. And the story of that, I remember being at a meeting in Washington, D.C., and actually I won't name them, but there are companies that we serve today who had representatives, people I've gotten to know over the years, who were in those meetings. And what happened was essentially it was a failure. I mean, it's not an activity that ended well, at least if you wanted to transform American industry in 2004.
Yeah.
It didn't happen. And in fact, what did happen was a whole lot of stagnation and failure. A lot of those early tech companies nosedived and don't exist anymore. And a lot of the big companies made significant attempts, but failed to generate real business outcomes. Yeah, it's fascinating. And we figured out the path, and it took us a long time also, and we failed many times on the way, but in the process, we did find a path that works to actually achieve the promise of industrial transformation in Industry 4.0.
So when you think about that path and that you should kind of crack the code in that, what are some of the obstacles that we need to be prepared to overcome? So within an organization, how do we overcome those? What obstacles do you see that we need to really face and solve to make this really possible?
Sure, the obstacles, I think there are three main obstacles that I think you could identify. And the first one is really on us. And it's just that we have to make it easy. And if you roll back the clock, the reason we failed from 2004 to 2011 or so is because we hadn't figured out how to make it easy yet.
Okay.
But it's on us. It's on the technology provider, whether it's us or one of our competitors. You have to make it easy to get the technology installed, get the data flowing, and get it connected so you can actually start to derive useful information rather than non-useful information or no information.
Right.
So that's the first one.
Okay.
And it's because just the real obstacle is change, and you can't start to change until you have information to motivate, to fuel that change. That's the first one. The second one is to collaborate. What we've found, a big part of cracking the code is what I've referred to previously is involvement, in our experience from our company's part, but it has to be ready acceptance in involvement and collaboration on the company's part. Mm-hmm. We can't solve any problems by ourselves. Yeah. We can only create the possibility to solve the problems. And companies that organizationally are prepared to collaborate and work to really make their company better, that's a second big obstacle that can be overcome, but it's challenging. Yeah. Because most people don't like change, and especially if they're not ready for it.
Right.
And then the third thing is about kind of the proof I alluded to last time. It's tracking the value. Okay. I think when it gets down to it, the behavior that we see is that most companies make decisions based on economics, just as they should. Yeah. And that's the behavior that we see. But it's complex. Tracking the value of, in the Industry 4.0 or Internet of Things, when you're making a manufacturing process better, what you're really doing is causing a failure that would have happened to not happen. And it's inherently tricky to quantify the economic impact of something that didn't happen. Yeah. If you buy a widget, if you buy a pair of glasses or a watch, you can assign the value of that because it's real. When you're solving a problem that now never happens, it's more complex, but it's possible. Yeah. So that just, really focus, and we do this in our work with our customers, they know this. You have to focus on that customer's reality and enable them to collaborate with us to actually boil it down to the dollars and cents and track the value. Those three things are the obstacles.
Okay. Interesting. I'm going to kind of build on that second one you mentioned, the collaboration part. So that sounds like it's going to be critical to all three of those pieces to make it work. So within an organization, who should I really be bringing in to partner with and collaborate with throughout the organization so that we get that energy and get the momentum and the movement that we need to get things going for this transformation?
Yeah, well, the unfortunate and rather scary answer is everyone.
Okay, let's bring everyone into the room. We'll figure it out.
Right, and that obviously won't work. Yeah. And that's a big reason for the 8% success rate. Right. What I would say is that's the real answer, but obviously that's not realistic. Yeah. And what I would say is they're especially in these larger global manufacturing companies. Right. The decision-making process and the execution against the plan is just multifaceted and complex. And that's true if you're a $1 billion company, a $10 billion company, a $100 billion company. They're all big enough to be multifaceted and complex. And what we found by working with, again, part of cracking the code is there is a part of each organization that's best suited to start with. Okay. Because you can't start with everyone. Right. They do have to be involved eventually, but it's the plant level leadership. Okay. That's what we found. When you have dynamic plant level leadership that's willing to accept the possibility of change, set a lofty goal, and rally their team towards it, that's typically where they're not too high but not too low in the organization. Right. I mean, not low and high is really the wrong way to say it, but it's just they're at the point where their job is to create positive economic impact for that part of the company, and they're capable of doing it in our experience. So that is the key place to start is just, again, those three circles. You have to install the technology, execute, generate the proof, and then evangelize. And once you do that within the confines of a location, then you just start to replicate that success all across the company. And there's more. So again, it's everyone. So what we've now found is that once you start to achieve that success, that's when it gets really complex. Because the organization and the leaders begin to realize that there is the possibility to make this dramatic change, but how do we go about it? There's for the reasons I said before, and the reason so many companies failed in the early 2000s and for a decade of failure. Big companies, small companies. Everybody failed because it's really hard to know what to do. So there are really three other parts. Okay. There's more than three, but there's three that we've identified. And our CTO, Dr. Jacob Loveridge, has really studied this. And incidentally, a big part of why we're where we are today is because he and our technology team, our engineers, were at least a half a decade ahead in terms of making the right choices about how to make it easy. Okay. Software infrastructure choices, wireless choices, device, sensor choices. So now that it's 2020, Jacob Loveridge has laid out the path specifically around three different groups that are the ones that need next to really adopt and believe in the future. And so the first of those is corporate leadership. So sometimes this is truly headquarters, C-suite. Sometimes it's division level, and it depends if how large and complex and global the company is. But what we've developed is just a guide. We actually call it the Industrial Transformation Guide. Okay. And this is a document that lays out how to commit your whole organization to Industry 4.0 and industrial transformation, which there are parts of that go beyond our scope. The scope of KCF is really focused on the machine health, transforming the machine health, but there are other aspects that the C-suite needs to be working on. It is. And so this guide talks about how to do this specifically in the context of machine health, and also how that fits in the larger scope of what companies need to be doing with their digital strategy. So this helps with prioritizing the strategy. It helps with orienting leadership and setting the right tone and direction for your people. That's the first one. The second one is the working with the people who have to deal with the data. So the IT group, many of these companies now have, they're known by different names, but there's an IoT strategy work group within many companies, big data analytics functions, these are the names, but it's basically the data people. And historically, that group has often been seen as almost an obstacle when you're trying to execute, and I don't think that's the right way to look at it.
Okay.
But when an operational leader wants to accomplish a certain goal, and they have to comply with very serious things regarding security, data management, long-term outlooks, using the right tools, integrating with existing systems, the data people, the IT department, the IoT leadership team, they have very real challenges to meet. And so, for those teams, we have created what's called an industrial transformation playbook.
Oh.
And this basically is our best, again, from our context and looking across a wide variety of organizations that we serve, it's a playbook for how to make the right decisions for the long term, the short term and the long term. And so that's what we try to do to help those companies make the right decisions based on our observations. Again, we're just trying to help our customers accomplish their goals, and that's a very important part to pay attention to. And the third one is really in procurement. So, we have customers that have gone both wide and selectively deep, which is the right way to do it, as I said. And when you do that, you get very familiar with the procurement group, and so within the procurement group, but also within the top strategists, procurement initially happens at the individual plant level, where you have these aggressive steps towards success. We've created another document which is called the Buyer's Guide. Okay. So the Industry 4.0 Buyer's Guide, and this is very important right now because if you imagine back to the mid-2000s, as I said, there were companies, some of the bearing companies were making IoT sensors, industrial wireless sensors, some of the motor companies were making them, and that's been there for 15 years. And now that there are companies like ours and others that are starting to have real game-changing knockout success, that's only going to get worse. The noise, the traffic of vendors and customers, manufacturers are bombarded by companies selling IoT technologies, especially software, because that's easier to get in. And I feel bad for them. I mean, it's complicated and it's confusing. And it's only going to get worse. The more success there is, it's only going to get worse. Right. So to address that, Jacob has created a buyer's guide. And it basically is intended to help see through the noise, help understand how to make a good decision, and how to set the right course that's appropriate to your business, and how to ultimately get to the right solution.
I like that. That connects so nicely. I have a guidebook, a playbook, and a buyer's guide, and now it's a way to have that conversation in a similar language across an organization. That's sometimes the toughest thing to do, as you mentioned, get all the groups to align around the right terminology, the right direction, the right strategy. So that sounds very helpful in accomplishing that.
Yes, definitely. And I should say, because we have relationships with, our customer base, they vary widely. And something that we are very interested in, the top leadership of our company, is engaging. So for those that listen to this conversation and are ready, whether you're top leadership or within the data, IT, IoT strategy group infrastructure, or whether you're in procurement and implementation, we would be thrilled to engage and to come to kind of meet those groups, both with these documents, but also through conversation, because we're always in the learning process as well, and we're subject to the same dynamics as everybody. If we don't learn quickly and find out what our customers want more quickly than our competitors, we're just as dead as everybody else is.
No, I like that idea though, because sometimes I can see things from my own perspective. I know what I want to communicate, but it's hard to make that connection. Having a partner like KCF to help do that sounds very helpful in that journey. So that's really good. So with those guides in place and kind of that sense of who I'm bringing to the table to make this work, how do I really accomplish industrial transformation in an organization? What are some of those best practices that you have found really work well to use those guides and to move us in the right direction and really begin to see that impact of industrial transformation in Industry 4.0?
Yeah, and I will say the overall scope of Industry 4.0 is a little wider than the part of it that we enable. So just to state that, we understand our role and our focus is really focused on machine health and deployments that solve industrial problems. Okay. So I'll speak just within that scope, which is the one we know. We see that there are three critical pillars that everything's built upon. And that the whole product, like to have a whole working solution, a complete solution, really requires these three things. And the three things are a true IoT solution. Okay. This means connectivity of not only the new technology that's deployed, but existing infrastructure, both software and sensors and equipment communications. A true IoT solution that ingests and directs all the necessary information. Okay. The second big pillar is enterprise level information. Because data doesn't solve any problem by itself. Right. You need the right data to get in front of the right person, whether it's a maintenance technician, an electrician, a vibration technician, or importantly, a business leader, a business decision maker, an operations leader, or an engineer who's planning for the future. Enterprise level dashboards and information that creates business information, not just data. That's the second big pillar. And then the third big pillar is really a huge key to the future, which is advanced analytics. Because, what you hear, some of the noise out there today, you hear a lot about AI and machine learning. And, the truth is, in grad school 20 years ago, we were working on AI and machine. We were using it just in our code, Right. It was part of getting a PhD in mechanical engineering at that time on optimization. And so there's nothing really brand new under the sun in that context. But today, it's possible. It's possible to actually achieve and employ advanced analytics. And so having that as a key part, the third pillar, having that advanced analytics pillar as a part of your overall ecosystem is vital. Okay. Yeah, nice. And then really, I talked a bit about sort of how you do this. We work with our customers a lot. And we've put things in the context of a pyramid. We basically look at the Industry 4.0 pyramid. And we're not the only company that looks at it that way, but I think, again, because we've really rolled up our sleeves and we've got the scar tissue, we have 9 steps on this journey. Okay. 9 steps that basically each application, each site goes through until you reach nirvana. And you can break them up into kind of 3 big steps, and that's the first one is basically just getting the data flowing. Right. Installing the technology, especially the retrofit, the new wireless machine health technology is the bread and butter of what enables the step change. That's step one. We have customers that call it, the ones that really deploy at large scale, call it lighting up the factories. And it's just, you go from blind to seeing, and that's the foundation that gets the whole thing going. The second part is, I like to call the magic middle, and this is the part that most people don't talk about, right. Which is actually solving the problems. Okay. And typically this involves, understanding the physics, understanding the behaviors, doing sequential root cause analysis. We have a whole process that we follow. We do a lot of optimization, and we have a process called the 4 C's and the 4 I's of problem solving. It's sort of the KCF way to solve problems. But that's the magic middle is, you earn the right to start solving the problems with all the data, but you have to actually put in that hard work at the asset level, the solution, the system level, and really study until you understand the problem well enough to deserve to solve it. Okay. And then the top of the pyramid, of course, is now when you get into machine learning and AI, and you basically automate a solution to the problem. And just to be clear, we have customers that are already at the top of the pyramid, that already have systems deployed where we've done this with them. Okay. Absolutely. Okay. And it's integrated into their control systems, and it's providing real-time feedback, and it's being computed at the edge. So that's the top of the pyramid. What we see, there's a lot of companies that try to start there.
Yeah.
And it's possible that they'll be successful. I don't think that they will be, because I don't think that most of the problems that need to be solved, they're not easy enough that you can start at the top of the pyramid. You have to earn the way there, and that's why it's such an involved process with the people, the knowledge that exists within any industrial operator, and then the problem-solving knowledge that we bring to the table.
Gotcha.
You earn that through the magic middle, but then you get to the top of the pyramid, and now you've essentially eliminated the possibility of that problem recurring, and you have data flows that are constantly informing your business decisions in perpetuity. And it's really quite a journey.
Yeah, interesting. Well, I like the way you kind of put that together with the pillars and the pyramid. I see that really connecting well to see that pathway, to see that direction. So when you say at the beginning of this, we kind of cracked the code, we have the pathway there. That begins to kind of align that nicely and provide the tools that we need to accomplish that within our own operation.
Absolutely, and when you combine that with the fact that we've seen the economic and operational impacts, eliminating 90% of safety incidents. Wow. Again, it's not just with the technology, it's with a complete commitment to organizational improvement, doubling the productivity, increasing machine life by 2.5 times. These are the things that, it's one thing to have a process, but when you have a process where you've already seen these economic impacts, it's the real deal, and we're just thrilled to be part of this journey with all of our customers. So great to have a conversation, and hopefully, again, this format hopefully enables us to queue up a whole series of conversations with our customers. And in fact, we have quite a few that we're prepared to come present at the summit, and we're going to be looking for ways to capture and deliver those presentations out to our customer base. So should be coming later this summer as well.
Well, that'll be a nice way to kind of link everything back together from where we started. Started with that idea of why this transformation is so important now, how we begin to move in that direction at a faster pace. And I really like this last piece of what we need to be doing to make it come together. And so thinking about that from an operational standpoint really gives us that energy, drive, and desire. So thank you, Jeremy, for that time. I really appreciate the insights around each part of that, and look forward to some of those additional comments from existing customers to share, here's how we're doing it. And I think that'll be a really nice capstone to this. So thank you very much, and enjoyed the conversation and appreciate the time.
Fantastic, Kevin. Great to get to know you, and I really appreciate you taking the time to sit down and talk with us about this story.
Great.